Hello, my friends. This is Dr. Ham. I'm supporting your journey with Principles of Economics class. Today we are going to start new topic, macroeconomics, and its relationship, or should I say, its intrinsic part of measuring element, gross domestic product, or affectionately called GDP. So what we want to start with some definitions, and then we'll give some overview how to calculate GDP. The way to think about GDP or gross domestic product is dollar value that is first to be defined as the market value of things produced. So GDP is measured in terms of the dollar value, is number one, and basically it is defined as the market value of things that are being produced. Now it's not just everything, it has to be new stuff that get produced. New means during the given calendar year. So GDP has to be tied to a particular year that will capture the new stuff. Another part of GDP is domestically produced. In the United States, if you want to measure GDP of the United States, if you want to measure GDP of China, then it has to be produced domestically in China. And one more item that is important to consider as a part of GDP, it has to be final goods and services in the hands of the final user for the given year, often but not always consumers. All right, so now we have the definition of GDP, and we are safe to go and look at how to measure it with some useful applications. So there are two approaches that you want to be aware when it comes to construction of GDP. The first one that we will consider would be expenditure approach. Expenditure approach basically consists of adding up the dollar value of all expenditures. And remember, by definition, on new domestically produced final goods and services. And we can look at the example. So if you want to look at GDP in front of you on the slide, you will find that the price of shoes times the quantity of shoes that were produced new within the calendar year domestically only as the final goods. And then you have price of cars multiplied by the quantity of cars, price of pizza multiplied by the quantity of pizza, and it goes on and on until you capture all the expenditures that related to production. The second part, or the second variation of calculation of GDP, would be income approach. Income, or sometimes it's affectionately called value-added approach. In this approach, you add up wages, salaries, rents, interests that are paid on some financial instruments, profits, etc. But it has to be domestically for a given year. Let's look at income approach from the table. So what I have in front of you is mechanical construction of GDP using income approach. And basically what you have is the following. On the first column, in the first column I have a stage of production, and there are 4 of them. Then the next one, sales receipts, what people get after they make a sale. The third one, cost of intermediate goods, and the fourth one, value added. So let's think about an ore miner who discovers the natural resource, extracts that from the ground, and sells to the steel maker for $5. Just hypothetically. We'll keep numbers very simple. So basically, one company or one person extracts the natural resource from the ground and sells that to a next person, in this case to the steel maker, for $5. Cost of intermediate goods recorded as 0. Value added is 5. Then the steel maker takes the steel and sells the steel to the car maker for $20. The cost of the intermediate goods is 5. That was the amount that was paid originally to the ore maker. And then value added approach is 15. Then the car maker takes the car and sells that to the car dealership for $50. The cost of intermediate goods is 20, and value added is 30. And then the dealership sells the car to the consumer. Notice, consumer is the final station here, for $60. Then the cost is $50, and the value added is $10. All right, so if you take all the numbers at the last column that is labeled as value added, you essentially will arrive to number 60. And that is value added approach that has constructed in front of you the GDP that we just have calculated. Now, let's consider some variations. Let's suppose that some goods have been produced in 2012 and some in 2013. If we were interested to calculate GDP during those 2 years after United States recovered from financial crisis, how do we go about it? So first 2 transactions are taking place in 2012 and the other 2 in 2013. The way to calculate using value added approach, you take and mechanically construct GDP for 2012, and based on the table from the previous slide, you will have 5 plus 15 equals to 20. Then similar fashion you will do for 2013. You take 30 plus 10 equals to 40. Now let's consider a different case. What if all transactions are recorded in 2013, but the first 3 occur in Japan and the 4th in the United States, which is very typical for car production? How do we go about it? Well, the way to calculate using value-added approach, gross domestic product for Japan, 5 plus 15 added to 30 equals to 50, using the table from the previous slides, and GDP for United States is left only to be 10. Now we are moving on successfully determining how GDP is subjected to the price change. The price change, when it takes positive values, is referred as inflation, and when it takes negative values, it is referred as deflation. Specifically, you will find when prices go up over time, we experience inflation. And when the prices decrease over time, we experience deflation. Essentially, it is about the growth rate of the prices. If it's positive, it's inflation, and if it's negative, it's deflation. Now let's look at inflation and its calculation. Just to summarize our discussion, and it's very helpful to think about in terms of the growth rate. So let's look at base year versus the current year. You have goods that supposedly produced in the base year. That's the year that you want to make comparison against when it comes to the current year. So, and the goods, pizza, jeans, and tractor, the favorite three goods for my students to use over spring break. So the price of pizza in 2015 was recorded at 10, for jeans at 24, and tractor at 12. And accordingly, the quantity was recorded as 10, 10, and 5. But in 2020, prices have changed for jeans and for tractor, and quantity adjusted as well due to different market conditions. So what I want you to do is to look at this table very carefully and maybe have a screenshot or somehow to compare, have those numbers in front of you as we move to the next slide. Now we have gross domestic product basket that will capture the growth rate, whether it's positive or negative, in relationship to the change in price. So we have price of current year times quantity of current year. All this sum up across all different goods and services that are new within a given year domestic production, divided by the price in the base year, that's the year that you want to compare the prices against, times quantity in the current year, and you sum up all the prices in the base year and multiply by the quantities in the current year, and then you have equal summation sign, abbreviated expression, and then I'll just take the numbers straight from the table that is in front of you, and we calculate that to be 1.054. So the question is, we have calculated the change in price of the current year 2012 against the base year 2015. And this change in price is equal to 1.054. The question is, are we observing growth rate that is positive or is it negative? And if so, is it inflation or it's deflation? And finally, what is the rate of change? So if you want to pause this video and answer those three questions, it will be very helpful for your learning experience. All right, to answer this question, we are experiencing, based on the slide, positive growth rate in prices. Thus, it is inflation, and it is equal to 5.4%. It's very typical to quote and to use inflation in percentage terms. And at this point, my friends, I'm going to stop this presentation. Until next time, you have a very healthy day. Thank you.